All right, so I'm here to talk about hip-hop architecture. And before I talk about hip-hop architecture, I first want to discuss what happens when we place black culture with what I'll call otherness. Usually when you place those two items together, you have innovation as a result. And I'll explore this through a series of images that I'll call before and after hip-hop. So this is the Emcee chair before hip-hop. It's the Emcee chair after hip-hop, where an artist took the Emcee chair and placed speakers, turntable inside of the chair. You can feel the music. Here's Mona Lisa before hip-hop. It's Mona Lisa after hip-hop, where an artist took rappers and painted them in the same medium and lighting as Mona Lisa. Here's Timberland boots before hip-hop, a boot that was worn by construction workers, contractors, people who needed to keep their feet safe while on construction sites. And here's Timberland boots after hip-hop. I don't need to change the image. Once Timberland boots became synonymous with hip-hop, the boot itself took on a whole new meaning. It was almost blasphemy to have a dirty Timberland boot. I've tossed away a couple of Timberlands myself once they've become dirty. NBA shorts before hip-hop, which is one slight movement away from a major mistake happening. It's basketball shorts after hip-hop. If you've seen ESPN 30 for 30 and the Fab Five, where they interviewed players from the University of Michigan about the music they listened to before playing basketball, and they talked about hip-hop. But the Fab Five was known for wearing their shorts a little larger. And to today's standards, those are still kind of short shorts. Here's a record player before hip-hop. We all know what that turned into, the turntable, huge industry. Here's headphones before hip-hop. And after hip-hop, we have Beats. Exactly, we got Beats by Dre. It's President of the United States before hip-hop. And after hip-hop, we had Obama. Nope, I heard the right answer right here. President Clinton, our first black president. No, he wasn't the first black president. But no, we had President Obama, who used hip-hop not once but twice to mobilize first-time voters and help solidify his space in the White House. So hip-hop was a crucial part of President Obama's scheme in getting first-time voters out to the polls. And then hip-hop left politics, and we ended up with Donald Trump. All right, and then here's architecture before hip-hop. Frank Lloyd Wright, Falling Water, one of the most iconic images of architecture in the world. And here's architecture after hip-hop. That's exactly what I'm here to discuss today. So that's looking at hip-hop and architecture. Well, hip-hop's influence on products from a very simplistic standpoint. And what I like to do when I talk about hip-hop architecture is go a little deeper. And architecture in black music is not a new idea. Usually when people hear hip-hop architecture, they think it's something totally new. But there's a guy, Le Corbusier, probably one of the most famous architects of all time. And he pondered what would happen if we were to mix black music and architecture. Now, this was a different time. This was during the 1920s. And that music was not hip-hop, it was jazz. And he dated or stalked, whichever way you might want to call it, Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker was the face of the Harlem Renaissance. And this is the story of Corbusier meeting Josephine Baker. So just take a listen. And this should be a song that everybody knows. You can keep it turned up. So in a second, I'm going to have you all sing a part of the song with me. So that song, if you go back and listen to it, is literally how he met Josephine Baker. But you, now y'all got to be louder than that. Louder, got what I need. What you say? All right. So Corbusier was saying that Josephine Baker had something that he needed. And what is it that he needed? Again, this was a different time. So this is a quote from Corbu talking about jazz music, where he said, Negro music has touched America because it is the melody of the soul joined with the rhythm of the machine. It is in two-part time. Tears in the heart, movement of the legs, torso, arms, and head. Innovating. It floods the body and heart, it floods the USA, and it floods the world. He will go on and say that jazz music is more advanced than the architecture. And if architecture were at the point reached by jazz, it would be an incredible spectacle. And what he was saying, what did jazz have that he needed? It was this impromptu nature of jazz. He said that black musicians had mastered the instruments unlike any other industry that was around at that time. And he wondered if architects could master the tools that were needed to create architecture, and if architects could create something just as beautiful as jazz musicians. And I call him the forefather of hip hop, and not that it's not in a way to give him a compliment at all, but it's more of a critique of architecture and urban planning in black and brown communities, and sometimes our good initiatives that oftentimes are bad in black and brown communities. But not to go into too much detail, but he wrote a book called The City of Tomorrow as he tried to change the center of Paris for working class citizens. And just 5 things that I wanted to point out that he talked about: translucent prisms of glass, immediate access to employment. He wanted to provide vast lawns which surrounded residents under the shade of trees and provide clean air and spaces with no noise. This was his idea of utopia. Paris thought he was crazy because of the, not the amenities that he was looking to provide, but the physical architecture that those amenities would be in, those tall monolithic towers. And again, Paris didn't do it, but there was a developer by the name of Robert Moses. And Robert Moses did what I call the worst remix in history, where he took not only the part that was most criticized by Le Corbusier's plan by people in Paris, he eliminated all of the amenities that Corbu said was responsible, said that was needed for this architecture to be successful. So usually in hip hop, we do something quite different when we sample. We usually try to take something that, take part of a song that evokes a certain emotion from the listener. Then we take that sample, we speed it up, we slow it down, we loop it until it creates an entirely new piece. And Robert Moses, again, he did not take the part that resonated within people. He took the part that was heavily criticized. And when he was building the Cross Bronx Expressway, he took Le Corbusier's model and provided these housing towers, which eventually would become the birthplace of hip hop. 1520 Cedric Avenue is the birthplace of hip hop. It's a building that was built at the suggestion of Robert Moses, and it's based on Le Corbusier's model for the city of tomorrow. And I call hip hop modernism's post-occupancy evaluation. Song after song after song provides a critique of the architecture, which a lot of times we think we're providing for communities that will help them, but hip hop is like the reality of urban renewal. And when we look at Corbu's plan of providing these glass towers or fresh air and no noise, one of the most popular songs in hip hop of all time by Grandmaster Flash gives a completely different view. Where his song, he says, broken glass everywhere. People pissing on the stairs, no, they just don't care. Can't take the smell, can't take the noise. Got no money to move out, I guess I got no choice. Rats in the front room, roaches in the back, junkies in the alley with a baseball bat. I tried to get away, but I couldn't get far because a man with a tow truck repossessed my car. And then the chorus will go on and say, don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. I see you rapping with me. All right, so what Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five was providing is this critique of modernism. Again, we had a plan as architects and urban planners, but the reality of that is in the music. And these are lectures that I go around the country giving at colleges and universities. And I've used these lectures to work with hip-hop artists in the Bronx to design a universal hip-hop museum. The Universal Hip-Hop Museum is similar to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, but this is in the Bronx, the birthplace of hip-hop, and it's for hip-hop artists, started by hip-hop artists. So it's a 750,000 square foot development. And the museum is the first phase, which is a 70,000 square foot museum. And I teamed with Autodesk and Microsoft to travel to 5 different cities and engage local hip-hop communities about what a hip-hop museum should be. And we had artists from the old school like Curtis Blow, and we even had artists like the Sugar Hill Gang, who made the most popular hip-hop song of all time, well, one of the most popular hip-hop songs of all time. And this is the result of a cross-country event that I call the Design Cypher, trying to make the language more relevant to the community. So when you say, come here for a design charrette, you get a ton of questions about what a charrette is. And so that's looking at it professionally. But academically, I challenge students to incorporate hip-hop into their work. So can we use hip-hop to study things like breakdancing? So this is something called the structural stability of breakdancing. So Florian Nicole is an artist who created some sketches looking at breakdancers in different poses. Can we take those structural studies and create products like chairs or furniture? Can that furniture be just as flexible as the artists themselves and start to mimic the movement of hip-hop artists? And then with hip-hop, I think when we talk about items like remixing, well, we talk about reuse. I think that's something that hip-hop has championed. We just call it something different, and we call it remixing. So if we look at graffiti artists have went into abandoned spaces throughout the world and created something totally new out of those spaces. This is actually an old prison in Berlin that hip-hop artists went in and did graffiti that eventually became a art museum, and the artists who created the museum were kicked out after they made it as beautiful as it is, and someone bought it and made it to an art museum and didn't allow the artists to come back in. And now we have architects and developers who are trying to mimic what hip-hop has been doing for years. This is a project in Detroit called the Z Parking Garage by Dan Gilbert, where he invited graffiti artists from around the world and gave them a floor within the parking garage to create these murals. So a lot of people go into the parking garage, not to park, but just to drive up to the roof and back down to see the different art. And then we have architects who are now trying to take graffiti and liberate it from that two-dimensional plane. It always implies this third dimension. Now architects are trying to create graffiti that now is not temporal, but more permanent. So this is an artist named Z Belling who created a house called The Hive. And now I'm working with artists, graffiti artists and youth to teach them about 3D modeling, 3D printing, so that they can take the graffiti that they create and start to make products from those items. And working with textile designers and clothing designers to see how they can start to produce furniture or remix furniture. That's the Swan chair, popular modern piece of furniture, overlaid with a designer. His name is Al Wassam in Detroit. And then we have hip-hop artists themselves who are looking at creating developments. This is Pharrell Williams, Made Happy. Pharrell Williams is very interested in architecture, and he created the Pharrell Williams Resource Center, which he's working on right now, to provide communities of color with the resources that they need in their cities. And last, going to skip that musical part right there. But last, I've created something called the Hip Hop Architecture Camp. The Hip Hop Architecture Camp, what I do is travel around the country. It was in 10 different cities this summer. We teamed with Autodesk to provide underrepresented communities with the skills and the exposure to architecture. And during these camps, we invite popular hip hop artists, and we have kids not only create visions for their communities, but also create songs about their architectural visions. Recently, we were on the Today Show. We even had the Today Show host write songs about what they would like to see in their communities. And we use it as a community engagement tool. So we've worked with city planning departments to get voices that they normally don't have as a part of their planning initiatives, to get communities out to talk. And there are three things that we want to provide during the Hip Hop Architecture Camp. We want to provide kids with an identity, all right, allowing them to be themselves and bring their culture inside of architecture. Provide them with community, so not only talking with the students, but also allowing them to bring their parents and make architecture, urban planning, and the policies that really shape our communities something that they can talk about as a family. And then give them a purpose. Why is architecture? Why is urban planning? Why are those professions important? And last but not least, I gave a TED talk that used a lot of hip-hop lyrics. And a lot of time the lyrics are not lyrics that everybody can get with. So I like to end with Vanilla Ice. If you can't understand anything else, this is good enough. Then his career was pretty bad after that. But those three words, stop, collaborate, and listen, is what I want to propose. And I think that we should get youth involved with all the initiatives that we have going on in their communities. Let's try to design with them and not for them. Thanks.